Now, the #1 story of the week. The Biden administration will ask Congress for billions of dollars to upgrade federal government IT systems. The White House wants $5 billion just for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Jim Gfrerer is principal at Fidelis Technology. He's former chief information officer at VA. Margie Graves is vice chair of the American Council for Technology and Industry Advisory Council. She's former deputy chief information officer of the United States and former deputy CIO at the Department of Homeland Security. Friends, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program today. Margie, I'll start with you. Where is the biggest opportunity for agencies to get bang for the buck out of the money that the administration wants to give them?
Well, first of all, Francis, I'd like to give a shout out to all of those across GSA, OMB, and Congress who have actually brought the TMF to fruition. It's been a 6-year journey. And of course, we're just absolutely thrilled to see the kind of largesse that's being offered into the fund at this point in time. And I think that can be effectively applied to truly address the scope of the technical debt that exists across the federal government. What I mean by that is that we originally asked for $3 billion in the first round of the TMF proposal. And that number was derived from the fact that we felt that there was $12 billion worth of technical debt that existed just from our quick thumbnail review of the existing contracts and the existing installed base. And to have this kind of funding applied to the fund at this point in time is really game changing. The technical debt must be aligned with the high value assets and all of the other aspects of making sure that the agencies have effectively put together their roadmaps for modernization and know how to sequence the projects so that they can get that bang for the buck that you were talking about. We need to see that tied back to the strategic plan of each agency and also to the priorities of this administration. And that will allow us to move forward with alacrity.
Jim, welcome. It's great to have you back on the program. What are the biggest areas of need in your view at VA if it gets this $5 billion the administration proposed in the skinny budget?
Sure, Francis, and good morning. Great to join you and Margie. The first thing to understand about the $5 billion, kind of riffing off Margie's conversation of technical debt, is that only represents about 3.9% of IT spend over $128 billion proposed discretionary for FY22. So when you look at that, and our previous federal CIO, Suzette Kent, used to say, if you're spending less than 5%, you're barely even operating the enterprise, much less modernizing it or transforming it, and certainly growing commensurate lines of business and addressing the technical debt. So the agency budget will be very challenged, even at that large number, a much larger number on the denominator, to keep up and address the debt in the year in which it's incurred. The biggest needs will be around infrastructure readiness program. That's anywhere from about $600 to $700 million. And again, the department is not addressing that debt. There is a gap every year in terms of that hardware, software, and other debt that comprises that.
Margie, to Jim's point, and let's set aside the numbers. What does addressing the technical debt get you? Does it bring you back to par? Does it bring you to, from a modernization or transformation perspective, does it get you back to par? Does it start to get an agency ahead of the curve? Or am I thinking about it the wrong way?
If you're applying these dollars strategically, it can actually get you ahead of the curve. If you narrow your aperture to those high value assets that I was just talking about, and you know what your sequence should be, i.e. how should the dominoes fall on your modernization roadmap? What is the most critical citizen-facing mission impact that you can address, and tackle that one first? And then that comes building blocks. If you're looking at this holistically, and using the right kind of approach in terms of DevSecOps and in terms of choosing platforms that can be reutilized for other modernization efforts, then you start to see that kind of acceleration that we're looking for in the actual implementation.
Jim, the number of $5 billion sounds pretty sexy, but in the context that you just laid it out there, it doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal. Am I missing something? Am I reading it wrong?
Well, if you look at the OMB numbers from previous years, an average amount for the top 14 agencies that are spending over $1 billion annually in their portfolio, the average spend is about 9.8% of their discretionary budget. Some of the highest are Treasury and SSA, which you expect in financial services, that are up north of 20%. So when you look at an anemic 3.9% and then pile on in a balance sheet perspective that you have $4 billion plus in terms of hardware, software, and human capital debt that's on your books and unaddressed, it really does present some real headwinds, especially in an agency that continues to grow and get massive supplementals.
Margie, we know we're going to get $1 billion in the TMF that you mentioned earlier in our conversation from the Stimulus Act. The administration wants more in the budget this year. How do you expect to see the TMF scale up? Will it be bigger projects? Will it be more projects? Some combination of both, or some other construct, do you think?
I think it will be some combination of both. And I'd like to follow on to what Jim was saying. In the sense of being able to really have an impact, the TMF does not stand alone. We are talking about utilizing the TMF as a tool, as a funding flexibility. However, funding exists within base budgets, funding exists in other areas where the stimulus package has applied additional funding to GSA, to USDS, and to CISA in DHS. We should look holistically across all of those funding sources to ensure that we are utilizing every dollar for maximum benefit. And some of those individual funding streams can be combined in order to have greater impact. So I would expect to see that we would continue with some of the demonstration projects that we had in the previous iterations of the TMF, where we had to really balance the portfolio with smaller level projects because of the limits on the top line of the fund. But now I think we can add to the equation some of the shared services initiatives, some of the larger multi-year projects that couldn't be addressed before because of that limitation. So looking at some of the QSMO opportunities that might be able to be advanced, which address whole of government issues in the shared services arena. So that might be one area where you see a change. But in reality, we want to continue to maintain a balanced portfolio that has a balance of risk, a balance of the size and quick turn of those projects, and a balance of making sure that we are instilling some forward-leaning, cutting-edge innovation projects as demonstrations that other agencies can utilize in the future to do as proof points also.
Margie Graves, Jim Gfrerer, thanks very much for joining me. Great to have you on the program today.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.